I just turned down a super rich werewolf who was willing to build me an entire city. And yet all I want is to go back to my boring hometown. 31. Did you read the book? Yes, Marcy replied, seamlessly slipping into a lie. 2 weeks ago, not many hours after her disastrous kissing fiasco, Sebastian ever so kindly went up to her and shoved a small book into her chest. It was black, with strong gold and ridges and a title she couldn't quite remember, but she knew by his quiet explanation that it had something to do with pacts. 𝐶𝐵 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐊𝐤𝐧𝐼𝐻𝑚 enthusiasm. And something else. She hadn't managed to even read one page of it. 𝐶𝐵 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐊𝐤𝐧𝐼𝐻𝑚 enthusiasm. It was because she'd been kind of salty, okay? Very salty about the fact that he totally hated their kiss. So that was her passive, aggressive way of getting back at him. 𝐶𝐵 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐊𝐤𝐧𝐼𝐻𝑚 enthusiasm. The truth was she forgot all about it. In her excitement of going to Everglades and making sure all her homework was done ahead of time, it completely slipped her mind. As a matter of fact, now that she thought about it, she had no idea where it was. Even the previous one she'd gotten from the library mysteriously disappeared. She would also be lying if she said she actually took the time to look for it. It was a shame, really, because now they were on a 3+ hour plane, and she probably could knock out a good portion of it in the air. Oh well, the information shouldn't be too pertinent. She learned so much already just by being around them and taking note of their gestures and how they do things. What could possibly go wrong? The only obstacle that presented itself for this trip manifested yesterday. Late in the night, she was helping them pack when Matt truly sucked at folding. Keisha was the cause of the altercation. She complained about not being given the option to go. And despite her never previously consenting to an assignment before, she argued to take Marcy's place. Marcy was more so curious as to why she never agreed to an assignment before rather than the fact that she sought to sabotage her sort of, but not, wittedy vacation. Noah later privately told her Keisha 𝐿𝐷𝐷 for fear of encountering 𝐾𝐜 wolves due to her past even if there were no threat of them in some areas. It appeared Marcy going spot a rivalry in her and she was willing to override her emotions. The whole argument was squashed when Papa kindly reminded her she was still grounded, and Marcy knew it was because of the time she tried to snipe her. Now that's just beautiful. Who would have thought Keisha trying to harm her would end up being so useful? Now she got to enjoy first-class eating next to her man, who unsurprisingly forced her to take the window seat while he took the aisle one to better stretch his legs. She had a vague feeling they paid for these spacious seats because they wouldn't comfortably fit in the economy one. It seemed Sebastian bought her lie, for there wasn't any suspicious in his eyes. Good, he acknowledged, evidently relieved she supposedly read the thing. Marcy winced at the relief that laced his voice. Yikes. Maybe she should have read the thing. She wouldn't spend too much time dwelling on that mistake, though. It was too late now. Besides, how dare he ask her right when they're already on the plane and heading there? Sebastian brought out a black, velvety box from his pocket. He paused, as though to collect himself, and then met her eyes with a steady gaze. I told you before that in order to come we would be doing things my way. For your protection I need to ensure no Everglades werewolf is rash enough to forcibly mate you. So to do this we will enter as an engaged couple who has not yet mated. Marcy squealed and jumped in excitement. Oh my gosh. Are you proposing because the answer is yes? She wrapped her arms around his neck and gave him a long, extended kiss on the cheek. Sebastian sighed and looked up, as though he knew he would be in for a crazy next 3 days but had already accepted it. Woman, is my head on your lap? I am not proposing. I'm merely telling you we will appear to be engaged. Traditionally, there is a period of engagement before the wedding happens and a couple is mated. We will pretend to be in such a time for the entirety of this trip. Marcy pouted. Doo-hoo. You ruined the mood, 𝐶𝐵. Loud enough for the others around them to hear. Thankfully, The whole section was brought out by the cult. Jordan poked his head from in front of them. "I'm assuming 𝐻𝐸 told you of his fantastic master plan." Laughing, Massey clucked her tongue in disapproval. "Yes, he has." Then, wanting to annoy him, "Hey, I have an idea. How about instead of me being engaged to you, I can pretend to be engaged to Jordan. I just don't want to burden you in any way. You are the one who will be speaking to them more frequently after all." She smiled, sweetly, waiting for his answer. The attendant became murderous as Sebastian slowly turned to face her. Jordan gulped. Let's just keep it the way it is," he said weakly, but it was as though Sebastian never heard him. His attention was solely fixed on her. Jordan ducked back into his seat to let her handle the consequences of her words. Meanwhile, the golden-eyed man closed the distance and let their foreheads meet. He pushed against her, until the back of her head hit the window and her neck was uncomfortably bending back. "Is there anything you wish to tell me about your affections for Jordan?" His voice was low, intending for only her ears to hear. She couldn't help but feel as though she was standing on a tight rope. Any move in either direction and she was screwed. "I already told you, Sebastian. It was only to make things easier for you, and to make him pissed off." But she wouldn't tell him that. He had a knack of ruining the mood to know what that felt like. "You think I can't handle this assignment and take care of you?" he asked dubiously. Massey smirked. A hand at his chest pushed him back so that she wouldn't be trapped near a window. "Oh, you can take care of me, all right. I just doubt your ability to act engaged. You freaked out when I kissed you, and now you want to pretend you're engaged. Give me a break. Let me worry about that. In the meantime, get this on." Though he was trying to give off the impression of indifference, she knew by his tense shoulders that showing her this had him on edge. When he threw her the box, she didn't even have to catch it. It landed perfectly in the middle of her opened hands. Massey grasped it. For a moment, she considered not opening it and shoving it right back to him, but the ambiguous box stared at her, pulling on the strings of her curiosity to prop it open. When she finally did, her mouth dropped. Housed inside was a dazzling diamond ring. On the sides of the diamond, the band intertwined like a ribbon of shimmering metal and gave it a romantic appeal. The ring was simple, yet very elegant. But before she did anything rash like actually put it on, she quickly closed it. Whatever material the box was made of was good, for it didn't do the snap she was expecting it to, which really sucked because she wanted to make the moment more dramatic, but instead it was subpar. Sebastian raised a questioning brow at her action. Apparently he expected her to just comply. Massey smiled. He looked very handsome today. Not only did he happen to wear the white dress shirt she gave him, but he also recently got a haircut and a nice shape up. His strong jawline made her want to grab it and plant one on him again, but she would have to be smart about the way she got things. "I have 2 conditions. If you want me to wear this, you have to put it on me yourself and kiss me. Otherwise I won't wear it." He glared and her eyes glimmered with mischief. She knew what he was thinking. He was ready to say no, but she wouldn't make this easy on him. "If you don't, I'll happily prance around as a single maiden. A lovely single maiden with mature. It's wonderful how they were on the plane already." So he cowled and threatened to drag her back anymore. Sebastian ripped the box from her hands and opened it, taking out the ring and grabbing her hand. He never once looking down to see what he was doing. His eyes remained fixed on her, as though angry she dared incite him in such a way. She was surprised at the way he slid it over her finger with precision. It fit her perfectly, almost as though it were made for her. She pushed her hair out of her face and behind her neck to see unhindered. Suddenly, she felt him tense. "There's something I need to tell you." His eyes drifted to her exposed neck, but the purple-eyed beauty did not notice. Massey intertwined her fingers with his. She was distracted by the view of a ring in her finger and the feel of his hands. She wanted to see how their hands would look together now that she had an engagement ring. It felt like her dreams were coming true, and yet she knew they were not. "Colin, in heat right now, since yesterday. 𝐊𝐸𝐬𝐧𝐶𝐬 𝐸𝐻𝐸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐠. He admitted. His deep voice drew her from her musings to pay attention to what he was saying. My alpha blood allows me to have more control than most, but you should still be careful around me. Mercy gave him one of her good girl smiles. Yes, 𝐊𝐲. Of course he'll be careful. But really, she was just plotting ways to make him go crazy. Well, this trip just kept getting better and better. Don't try anything foolish. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬. Giving her a stern look. Look at that. He was reading her better and better and better each day. It was as though he didn't buy anything she just said. Deciding to cut the act, Mercy waggled her newly engaged finger in his face, loving every moment of this. It felt wonderful to have the upper hand. She'd deal with the consequences later, after they returned to Dark Falls. If you want me to keep this on, I still need a kiss. And I'm not talking about one on the cheek, she clarified, giving him a coy smile. Sebastianette's head came down, bumping her nose with his. You said you would behave. I am behaving, she insisted. He had no idea how bad she could be if she wanted to 𝐻𝐻. His eyes lowered to her lips and he gave her a swift peck. On the forehead. Not fair. She protested, her lower lip poking out. She should have known to be more specific. Sebastian rested his head back against the plush seat and began to make it lean back. When he looked back at her, the pout remained, and he raised a hand to cup her cheek. His thumb grazed her lower lip. You do not know what you ask, he said softly, retracting his hand and folding it over his lap. Soon, he closed his eyes. Mercy sighed. Figures he would slide his way out of this one. Next time, he won't be as lucky, judging by the similar slouched positions and sleeping faces. The rest of the cult had fallen to a similar fate. It was understandable they were all tired. While Mercy fell asleep after packing, they all stayed awake until the wee hours of the night, making sure they had everything set and the paperwork done for an easy-going trip. Elphys Amiel also had a long, late talk with the men since this was their first serious trip. It made her all the more excited and thankful that Mia allowed her to join them. The layout of the trip hadn't gone as they intended. The only flight to accommodate all of them was in the afternoon, so they were excused from school and boarded the plane around 12 o'clock. Now asleep, Sebastian looked at peace and unguarded. She watched him with bated breath, noticing the way his chest rose and lowered steadily. When she kissed him on the day of his birthday, he had been extremely mad and agitated. It was as though she committed a heinous crime. Funnily enough, the following days he seemed to exhibit more affection, and didn't push her back as much when she was being overbearing. She was still not allowed anywhere near his room, that was made clear, but he was slightly less reserved. Mercy pressed the button to incline the seat back for added comfort. She turned the TV and settled for watching a romantic comedy. First class conveniently had free Wi-Fi and a list of movies, more than enough to entertain her until they land the plane. Unlike them, she would be unable to slumber, no matter how much she tried. The long movie was an excellent distractor, for after it was past midway, the flight attendants began to line the corridor in effort to take people's orders and prepare the food. She happily began to shake Sebastian awake. Wake up, 𝐊𝐲, roughly shaking his shoulders. In moments he was awake, regarding her with half-lidded eyes. Why did you wake me? They're starting to pass out food. He yawned, but his posture remained languid and relaxed. Right now, he looked ever so approachable and non-dangerous, adorable, like a big, cute wolf. When the flight attendant reached them, she gave them a menu to make a selection. One of the perks of flying first class is that they wouldn't have to get the plain sandwiches served in economy. Mercy easily chose the chicken Alfredo pasta. She felt like eating carbs today. Sebastian was not as quick. His amber eyes continued to survey the short, albeit diverse list of selections. Seeing her opening, The flight attendant smiled 𝐃𝐽𝐳 and even bent down to explain the selections, as though Sebastian himself cowled and treated the descriptions. But really Marcy knew she just wanted to give him an excellent view of her chest, which failed miserably, because his eyes never strayed from the paper at hand to acknowledge her. A slight nod was all he gave to indicate he even heard a word she was saying. Regardless of his inattention, Marcy was still peeved at the way the woman was offering herself to him. There was a ring on her finger now, and regardless of it being real or not, he was hers until it came off. "Bunny," Marcy said smoothly, wrapping possessive arms around him. "What about the steak and mashed potatoes?" Unlike the flight attendant, Marcy wouldn't just give him a nice view. She had pressed them all against his face. Sebastian peered curiously at her, clueless of her intentions, but making no move to distance away from her. His eyes became clouded. Unsure, he mumbled, distracted by her adjacent assets. Marcy smiled brightly at the flight attendant, who seemed to have just remembered the purple-eyed beauty was even there in the first place, even though she just took her order like 46 seconds ago. "Yeah, no one will be forgetting chess with him. You'll have to excuse my fiancé 𝐊𝐢𝐳 is always back and forth when it comes to his food." She let her fingers run through his hair, making sure the attendant saw her gleaming engagement ring. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐳, she acknowledged, clearly disappointed he was more than just her friend. "Congratulations. Enjoy your vacation." Her voice held anything but excitement, and when she was finally off, Marcy sat back in her seat, feeling very satisfied. Sebastian wouldn't stop staring at her. "What was that?" Marcy gave him a look. "She was obviously trying to make a move on you. That's why she was showing you her boobs." "I did not notice." He blinked, evidently confused. "I noticed yours though," he said quietly, mostly to himself. But Marcy heard it. "Of course you did. That was the point, Sebby," she said smugly. "Like the view." She would be having way too much fun pretending to be his fiancé. He looked away. "I will not answer." That had to be one of his favorite lines with her, his best avoidance tactic. She would be getting her unanswered questions one way or another. The food arrived shortly after, and Sebastian ended up ordering seconds. The medium-sized portions were too small to satisfy his appetite. When they finished eating, he didn't go back to sleep. Marcy tried to persuade him into watching the movie with her, and he denied her as was his custom. It was too girly, too mushy, too everything. He tried to watch a different movie than her, which she firmly opposed and maybe even threatened to kiss him if he did, to which he argued his case, that they had separate TVs anyway. Why does it matter that they watch different things? And of course it didn't have to make sense, because she was Marcy and thus all her ideas were great and not easily overridden. He surrendered to her whims, but under the condition that they chose a different selection. They settled on some action movie that aired a few months ago, and by the time it was finished the plane was finally arriving. The best perk of flying first class was the ease of exiting. They didn't have to wait for passengers ahead of them to get their things together. They didn't have to bump heads with odd strangers. They just up and left. After going through customs, an elegantly dressed aged man held a sign that indicated he would be their chauffeur to the Everglades pack. He led them to a sleek, large limo that accommodated them nicely. It was then she remembered what Jordan told her about them, that they were an extremely wealthy pack. Marcy had to hand it to Mr. Chauffeur. The man had talent when it came weaving in and out through traffic. It was impressive. This was no small vehicle he was operating, yet he did it with a fluidity that mirrored an ice skater. The movements were quick but smooth. It showed her why the pack kept him around. Slowly, their surroundings became less and less busy, the homes more secluded and larger the further they got. Then, it seemed they turned a corner in nowhere land before they began to approach a beautiful gated estate. Or should she say a colossal mansion? Their home was massive, larger than the cult's home in Dark Falls. Well, now her home too, since she was technically his fiancé now. The driver was immediately buzzed in by a standing guard, and they went up the driveway. The only thing Marcy found off was the lack of trees surrounding the estate. Perhaps she was used to the dense forests that surrounded them back home, but she assumed wolves like to be near the woods. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. The grand estate was fenced in all around, setting them apart from any trees. Any greenery they possessed was clearly for aesthetic value only. The driver parked directly in front of a tall, two-door entrance. As they stepped out of the limo, 2 butlers were ready to greet them. Apparently, they were assigned to give them rooms and tell them today's schedule. Since you're engaged, would you like to share a room or have private ones? The butler gave his whole attention to Sebastian, completely bypassing her. He didn't even glaze in her direction to include her. It was as though the choice were never up for her to decide anyway. Only he could speak. Marcy overlooked this and rather perked at the idea of sharing a room with Sebastian. It sounded exciting. She imagined how great it would be to share a bed. It would be the ideal playground to invade his space. Amped at the prospect, Marcy nodded animatedly. Yes, of course, actually no. Sebastian interrupted, maneuvering her behind him. Here she was blocked entirely from seeing the coordinator. Since we have yet to fulfill the mating process, it would be best to sleep in separate quarters for now. Marcy huffed in indignation. He was such a spoilsport. There went her cuddling fantasies. She could only glare at his back as he continued talking with the man. Since the cult had been here previous times before, they didn't require a tour of the home. It was only out of courtesy that the butler walked them to their rooms, as it was in the same visitor's area as before. Her room was expectantly beside Sebastian's, and when the butler gave his farewells, she immediately left his side and went into her room. She was put off that he refused to share a room with her, feeling very much miffed. Dinner wouldn't come for another 2 hours, so she would take advantage of this time to settle down and rest. Not too long after, Sebastian entered with her suitcase in tow. I have your things. Marcy lifted her chin and looked away from him. You can leave them right there. Goodbye. She clicked. Sebastian dropped her suitcase, but instead of leaving, he came to her instead. Since she was sitting on the bed, he had to crouch to see her eye level. I know you don't like this set up, but it needs to be this way. Is the idea of being in a room with me really that revolting? She brought up, 𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Sebastian made move to touch her, but seemed to think better of it and retreated. Merci. I am currently going through a moment of heat. I've already explained to you the risks associated with it. The least I need to happen between us is an accidental mating. What would be so bad about that? I'm a great catch. She threw. Sebastian sighed. It's not how I pictured things. You have no idea what you're getting into. And I refused to choose a mate for myself in a moment of fleshly weakness. He responded, an undertone of disgust seeping into his voice. Deciding to ignore him, Marcy took off her shoes and laid down on the bed. The mattress was comfortable, and now that she was on an actual bed, perhaps she could catch a quick nap. His golden eyes followed her movements, and once he saw she was indeed determined to not speak to him any more, he stood to his height. They'll come pick you up for dinner. His smooth voice made her want to crawl to him, but she wouldn't. Instead, she made sure she laid sideways with her back to him and her face to the wall. Whatever. Marcy closed her eyes in an attempt to fall asleep. She heard mild shuffling, but then a pause. Suddenly, she felt a warm hand on her shoulder and lips on her cheek. He kissed her, and she was frozen in her spot, surprised he would even do such an action without her first initiating it. His nose nuzzled against her neck and she felt his cold breath as he whispered, "Just trust me." The Cheeto describing the dinner of Everglades as elaborate would be a severe understatement. It was not like a typical dinner held at Dark Falls, where massive bowls were placed in the center of a huge table and the family huddled around together and ate wherever there was space. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Their eating was held in a massive ballroom organized to look like a buffet. Large basins holding all varieties of different foods lined the edge of the wall, with long and short tables periodically placed for people to sit. She felt like she entered the food area of some fancy resort. Even the amount of people was impressive. They walked around everywhere, socializing left and right. How the heck did they have so many people? I told you, Marcy. These people mate faster than rabbits, Jordan murmured, after she unknowingly said it out loud. Marcy continued to gape in awe. If it weren't for Sebastian's steady presence in front of her and his firm grasp, she would probably stay rooted to her spot and continue to take it all in, judging by the direction he was going. Their group was headed to a decidedly better-looking table in the center. All the tables were covered in beautiful gold, white tapestry and topped with silver utensils, but this table in specific was more detailed in its decoration. Even the chairs were covered by a gold, spun fabric. The whole ensemble gave it a regal appeal. For being barbarians, they sure knew how to live like royalty, and dress like one too. Your tongue, woman, Sebastian scolded, squeezing her fingers in his hand. Marcy muttered a quiet "oh" and decided she really needed to get focused till she could stop accidentally saying her thoughts out loud. But truly, these people went all out for dinner, and to think that this was every day. All around her she saw their members parade in the latest fashion trends. The women in particular were more decked out than the men. They went the whole 9 yards by wearing heels and their hair perfectly styled. Even their make-up was impeccable. What were they all? Models or something? What amazed her most was how different the people of Everglades were compared to Dark Falls. In contrast to the cult's darker features and reserved dispositions, the people of Everglades looked like balls of blonde sunshine that left explosions everywhere they went. They were loud, boisterous, and rather lively. Compared to them, the cult dressed in simplicity and their stealthy steps could afford them an easy blend to the background. When they reached the center table, the first people she noticed were the couple seated at the head. They looked older, and as Sebastian completed his duty by being the first to give pleasantries, she found out the couple was in fact the alpha and his wife, Jasmine. They didn't all shake hands as she expected them to. The couple made motion to stand up, but Sebastian lifted a hand to halt them. To the couple's amazement, the cult gave them a small bow in unison. Marcy was caught a little off guard but managed to blend in since she was hid behind Sebastian. Sebastian, still proper as ever. No need to be so formal, boy, the man bellowed, laughing loudly and patting him on the shoulder. Alpha Stevens, thank you for welcoming us here, Sebastian replied, sounding as serious and monotonous as ever. You're free to come as often as you like. Ah, and who is that little doe I see hiding behind you? He inquired, twisting his neck to get a better view of her. Sebastian moved to the side, exposing her to the scrutiny of 2 ocean blue eyes. There were mild signs of crow's feet at the edge of his eyes, and some vague lines of wrinkles on his forehead. It revealed that despite his carefree disposition, he was a man that carried many worries with him to bed. This is my fiancé Marcy, Sebastian introduced, not once letting go of her hand. Marcy smiled brightly, feeling more at ease and not so out of place now that she was introduced. A fine choice, Stevens cheered, clapping his hands. Then, he looked around the vast dinning area with high urgency. Come to think of it, now that you're engaged, you can give my son a word of advice. Stevens is dealing with a confused period, and thoughts far too much. I can't have him lag behind now, can I? Marcy held back her laughter. It felt like everything Stevens said was screamed or yelled. Anyone from around the table can hear his thunderous voice and gather hints of his side of the conversation. I'm sure I will encounter him today. Sebastian's response was vague, and offered no promise of giving this so-called Stevens dude any advice, but as far as Alpha Stevens' hearing went, that was good of a yes as anything else. Excellent. What a wonderful man you've grown to be. How's Samuel, Stevens' wife, who had otherwise remained disinterested and awkwardly detached from their conversation, noticeably perked at the mention of Sebastian's father. It made Massey wonder what kind of history these older folk had. It was also interesting to note that 𝐸𝐸𝐸 and Mia looked a more youthful and happier duo than these two. My father is doing well. He sends you his regards. The wife seemed disappointed at Sebastian's brief answer. She looked beautiful, decked out in the finest jewelry and elegant clothes. She sat in a high chair beside her mate. They looked excellent power couple, and yet she looked burdened. Fantastic. Well, go enjoy the food. We will talk about the boring stuff later. To my agent 𝐿𝐸𝐬 𝐑𝐞𝐝𝐬, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. No boring stuff around the meal table. He boomed, followed then by laughter at what he perceived to be his own funny joke. Massey laughed with him, because quite honestly this man looked like a comical baboon. It was great to watch. His wild hand movements were oftentimes avoided by his wife, who appeared well versed in not getting hit or having wine sloshed on her clothes. I like this one. She has great sense of humor. Sebastian nodded out of politeness and then guided their group to one of the buffet tables. Finally, Noah grumbled, being the first to grab 𝐊𝐸𝐳 colored plate station at the beginning of the table. Massey followed after him by being second. That was cute how you guys all bowed. Very official looking, she complimented, serving herself the rice. Sebastian shrugged, seeming to find the earlier action non-consequential. It wastes less time. We can all bow at the same time and get it over with. Shaking hands with everyone would be a hassle. Still looked cute, she countered, making a point to kiss him on the cheek. He gave her one of his heart, stopping smiles and pat her side to make her move forward on the line. Yeah, Sebastian, I looked freaking cute. Let me be complimented, Noah added, giving himself a generous helping of a sloppy Joe. And where's my kiss? Massey made move to give him one too, but Sebastian's hand on her belt loop prohibited her from going forward. You don't get one, he answered smoothly. The purple-eyed beauty giggled. He was getting progressively more possessive as the days went. It was moments like these that reminded her that although he wasn't as forward as other men when it came to pursuing her, he still had a clear interest. After serving themselves, they found an empty table spacious enough to fit the 5 of them. Did you guys notice how excited the elf's wife got when he mentioned 𝐸𝐸𝐸? Massey brought up, unable to hold it in any longer. Jaden was the first to respond. I did. No doubt has to do with their previous history. Oh, someone spill the tea, she enthused, dropping her fork on the plate. Her food was already forgotten as she grasped the edge of the table and leaned forward. Jaden cocked his head to the side, confused. There is no tea on this table. And why would I make a mess? Sebastian rolled his eyes. Massey, if you wish to be nosy, just ask my mother. She'll tell the story to any soul willing to listen to her long babblings. She gave him the thumbs down. I give you a horrible rating. I want at least some kind of information to keep me placated until we go back. Noah chuckled. Long story short, Jasmine used to have some kind of relationship with 𝐸𝐸𝐸. She's actually originally from our pack. Then Mia came into the picture. Drama. Stephen stowed Jasmine away from Samuel. More drama. Jasmine regrets leaving Samuel. But too late. Happy ending and Sebastian is born. Massey ruffled Noah's hair. The story was concise and lacked details, but knowing his low attention span it was to be expected. She'd get the juicy details from Mia later. She'd been meaning to hear of her love story for a while now. I appreciate you. For a guy, that was great. He took a big swing of his soda and burped. Thanks, princess. I'm glad you see my good qualities. This food is very subpar, Jaden commented, shoving a spoonful of salmon into his mouth, then shaking his head at the flavor. You did have a point. While the food was excellent in presentation, it lacked the most important essence, its taste. That's because you're a talented chef. Out of all of us, you would notice it most. To my agent 𝐿𝐸𝐬 𝐑𝐞𝐝𝐬, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I'm going to get some dessert, she mused, getting up from her seat. She hadn't eaten much of her food yet, but the idea of sweets sounded pretty good right now. Enthusiasm, in the dessert area, she skipped over the cookies and brownies, feeling they were too basic to grab her attention. She opted for a piece of carrot cake, for chocolate-covered strawberries which were so fun to place in the flowing fountain, and a glass of some syrupy drink. She was slowly surveying the other options when a looming shadow came behind her. When she turned, she was met with aquamarine eyes and pale blonde hair. A cocky smile was on his lips, and he radiated confidence. Instantly she knew the type. He was casually waiting for her to start conversation and even flirt with him. It's what he was used to, and while it's great he had high self-esteem, he needed to step off her personal space. "Sorry, it'll let you get a better view," she said, moving to the side under the pretense of letting him see his dessert options. His eye openly appraised her, and judging by the way they glittered she knew he was liking what he saw. "No need to go anywhere at all. The view was fine from where you were," he responded. Mercy blinked. Oh, definitely flirting. Time to nip it in the bud before it got out of hand. "Sorry, Blondie. You're not my type." Not your type?" His expression was one of incredulity. It was obvious he had never gotten turned down before. With his boyish good looks, it's not surprising he was used to having girls fall at his feet. Mercy could relate to him. She felt the same way when she first met Sebastian and he purposely avoided her. Nevertheless, there was a first time for everything, and this would be his. "Yeah, I've already went through my playboy phase. Now I'm into the tall, dark, brooding types who are in denial of when they like a girl." It was funny to think that in another period, she would have probably entertained him, but things were different now. Her heart was already taken. "You're kidding me?" He deadpanned, disbelieving. Mercy held up her engaged finger. "Nope. Thankfully, they eventually come around." She smiled. "Dang it. Guess I lost my chance, huh?" He chuckled. "On the bright side, there are many beautiful single girls here." Her eyes fell to a pretty she-wolf dressed in impossibly high heels. She looked like a glorious sky 𝐿 up, in the merry sky ceiling. The blue-eyed woman followed her line of sight. "No thanks. I don't want my bitten off," he said sorry. Mercy laughed wholeheartedly. She had to hold her drink away to avoid it splashing over her. He gave her a toothy grin. "Oh, I made you laugh. What's your name, female?" 𝐿𝐤𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐬 Heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. She placed her drink down and held up her hand. "Nice to meet you. The pleasure is all mine," he murmured suggestively. He didn't offer her his name, but she didn't care enough to ask. Not like she should be making male friends around here anyway. The worst that could happen is they misinterpret her meaning. Out of habit, she pushed her hair off her shoulders and began to pick up her drink again. But his new interest was undeniable. "You're engaged, but not marked." He smirked in satisfaction and took a step closer. Mercy took a step back. 𝐸𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐬 𝐸𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐬 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She should have remembered that they didn't do things the old-fashioned way by giving women a choice. They just bit them at their own fancy, even with an engagement ring. He still felt he had a chance. "I will be marked very soon," she stated firmly, hoping to cut through any ideas of his. He closed in on her, like a snake sliding up to his prey, but she wisely stepped away from him the nearer he got. "You've ever heard of that saying? Finders keepers. Losers." "Well," he smiled deceptively, letting her figure the rest out. Suddenly, a tall frame intercepted them. The air switched from light, weight to one filled with hostile energy, so much so that it made the blue-eyed man move several steps back. Mercy felt the cackling power at the edge of her senses. Warning. It felt like a dangerous buzzing current, poised to wreak havoc and major destruction at any given moment. She had never felt something so intense. What was this? "You will stay away from her, Stevens." Mercy sighed in relief. Grateful to have Sebastian with her, she felt all the tension leave her shoulders. She was safe. At the mention of the Werman's name, she immediately realized this was the alpha son, the one whose father asked Sebastian to help him settle down. Stevens chuckled. A female with mature. It's in high time since your pack has indulged in another of this type. Please tell me she's only your ward, and that the man she's engaged to is a lesser wolf. Sebastian's eyes narrowed. Don't try my patience. She's not only my ward, but my engaged-er. He acknowledged sorry, holding his hands up in surrender, his eyes filled with grudging acceptance. Don't worry, brother. He'll make no move romantically. I won't even touch her. You have my word. Friends only. Mercy placed a calming hand on Sebastian's arm. Stevens was the alpha son. She didn't want him to get into bad terms with him, although it seemed like they weren't very friendly to begin with. Yes, friends, she agreed. She tried to pull on his arm to gear them back to the table, but Sebastian didn't budge. He stared down at the man until he finally huffed and slipped away. Without a word, he grabbed her and led her back to the table. Wait, my sweet drink, she protested, realizing it was left on the table. Sebastian grunted, but managed to reach for it in time. When they reached the table, Noah expelled a low whistle, enthusiasm indicating he saw the incident near the dessert area. He waggled his brows at her suggestively, starting a ruckus already. Mercy stuck her tongue out. Noah was such an instigator. Don't look at me. Sebastian was the one who started the argument over there. We were not arguing. I was establishing boundaries. Sebastian corrected. Mercy cowed and stopped the snort from escaping her lips. He said he won't touch me. But people do what they want. At this, Jaden felt the need to interject. Both of them have alpha blood. When they give each other their word, they have to fulfill their end. Otherwise the man loses integrity, amongst other things. Mercy wisely decided to leave the topic and not delve much deeper. She decided to focus on the fact that her man had made his presence known. She passed an arm around his shoulders and drew him near. Sebi, were you jealous? She teased. He pushed away from her and continued eating his food. I will not answer. The air was hot and misty, almost suffocating to breath. But despite the temperature, Mercy leaned back against the comfortable wooden bench and let her hands for her towel. It was wrapped around her snuggie, and with her sitting down it wouldn't be going anywhere. Not that it really mattered. It was a female-only sauna, and it amazed her that despite the sheer number of people in this pack, no one thought it nice to enter here in the late night hours. When one of the butlers offered to give her a tour, she quickly accepted and followed him around like an excited puppy. Their home was massive and amazing in every sense. Unlike Dark Falls, it was not surrounded by forest and trees. Instead, they had a humongous swimming pool, a basketball court, 2 fields, and even a workout room. As if it couldn't get any more luxurious, they doled out comforts, and this sauna was one of them. Mercy really hoped the whole expelling out toxins stuff was true, because she expected to come out of here glowing. Sebastian better do a double take next time he sees her. Otherwise this stuffy air won't be as worth it. Just as she started to close her eyes, girlish squeals followed by some giggling caught her ear. Looks like she wouldn't be alone for long. In moments the small door opened, and in entered 3 girls, all dressed in similar manner with towels draping their curvy forms. They were beautiful, all 3 of them, but what amazed her was how different they looked. One was ebony, skinned with plum clips and brown hair tied up in a bun. The next one was tan. She was more on the slender side, but it was her vibrant red hair that caught most attention. The last one was pale. She was short with near, translucent hair. 3 pair of eyes fell on her, and the previous loud chatter was now replaced by a curious hush as they assessed her. Are you a new addition? The brown-haired girl asked, breaking the silence between them. Mercy sat up straighter. New addition? I don't know what you mean. In visiting with my fiancé where he does business with Alpha Stevens. The 3 nodded in unison. Raven, the same girl said. introducing herself. Then she gestured to the other two. That's Ruby and 𝐶𝐵. The names were easy to remember. And funny enough it went with the hair color. Nice to meet you. Immerse. She held her arm up to shake their hands. But when she raised it, Ruby gasped. Oh my gosh. You have an engagement ring, she cried, clutching her hand. The other two also gaped and drew attention to it. Mercy laughed. Did they not hear the part when she said she came with her fiancé? Of course. I'm engaged. The other girls blinked. Yes, but you're not marked. All three of us are Steven's fiancé until he picks one of us to mark. None of us have gotten a ring. Ruby crooned. Her voice oozed of yearning. It was clear she wanted a ring. Raven was the first to let go of her hand while the other two continued fawning over the gem. Not that it would make a difference. Even after being chosen, we still wouldn't get a ring. I've never seen a marked woman in this pack get one. Rings aren't a part of werewolf culture, she reminded. Mercy wrinkled her nose. While all three of them were focused on the ring, she was more concerned about the fact that this man claimed 3 women. How are all 3 of you his fiancé? You can't have more than one. 𝐊𝐢 plopped beside her and whisked her blonde hair to the side. We all have mature, so each of us pull him equally in terms of attraction. He just needs to pick. I'm kind of glad it's taking him a while because I love staying here. She closed her eyes and seemed to have gone off to a happy place. How odd. So what happens if you aren't chosen? We can leave. Raven started. Or give the other men in his pack a chance. There was way more of us before. We started out as 15 and the number continuously dwindled. Some of the girls who didn't get picked ended up being marked by others of this pack. Sometimes he brought an addition, but for now there's only 3 of us. Mercy had so many questions. It felt like she had entered a werewolf version of The Bachelor. You all must really like him, she said testily, curious if they found his whole set up agreeable or if they harbored any dislike for it. Ruby shrugged in a carefree manner. Whether he picks me or not, as long as I get to stay in this mansion, I'm good. I'll probably go for the future, beta if it doesn't work out with him. Raven frowned at her disclosure. I only want Stevens. 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐷 handsome, rich, and will eventually be the alpha of this pack. I like top-tier men. She lifted her chin in a dignified manner, as though dating anything else aside from an alpha was below her. Mercy was glad she didn't have to deal with that fiasco. Sebastian was the opposite. He stayed away from girls and shy from excessive attention. Playboys was overrated. But hey, at least they got to stay in a cool house and enjoy the luxuries that came with it while the man made his decision. For the next half hour she chatted with the girls and got to know them. They were a friendly bunch, and she found it great that they held no animosity in spite of their technical competition. When she could no longer bear the heat, they ended up making plans to meet each other tomorrow. They even offered to pick her up in her guest suite, seeing as their rooms were far off in another area and she would have difficulty finding it. The sauna offered showers on the side, and Mercy took advantage of this by using the cold water and soap to cool off. She changed into another pair of clothes she brought and headed back to her room. The cult should be falling asleep soon, and she knew Sebastian would be checking in on her to make sure she was all right. After making a few turns, Mercy quickly realized she had no idea where she was. She was lost in the maze that is Everglades mansion. The worst part is she was wearing a skimpy summer dress that if Sebastian somehow found her wearing in public, he would be sure to bite her head off and bury her with a derogatory comment. Oh my, the treats they send to this house keep getting more delicious by the batch. I definitely want a taste. Mercy felt herself squirm. The words of the stranger felt slimy. She considered taking another cold shower, with all the innuendo this man splashed on her. It's not Halloween, buddy. No trick or treating around here, she retorted, wondering why her luck had to be so abysmal. The man would be considered handsome by today's standards. Tall, nice face, strong built, but his most definitive feature was his nose. It looked like it had been smashed up a couple of times and made crooked by the repeated impact. No doubt he enjoyed getting into brawls and unnecessary confrontation. Talk about a facial feature that gave a man character. His eyes gleamed with predatory interest. roving her rakish lie as though he hadn't eaten in over a month. It happened to be his favorite meal. He didn't hide his wandering gaze as it stopped in her most feminine assets, making it very obvious what was on his mind. It was very disturbing, and quite frankly annoying. In the past, Mercy loved getting male attention. She was used to it and even reveled in it. I mean, come on. A girl's got to know she still got it, but the careful respect she had gathered while in Dark Falls made her appreciate the men that actually wanted to talk to her and spend time, not just see her as a sexual interest. Why did it feel like the people of Everglades seemed to always be in a horny and seek sexual gratification? Don't worry, sweet, he reassured. If I can't get a treat out of you, I promise to give you treat out of me. His tongue slid out. He circled it over his lips sensuously. His beady eyes felt like tiny ants crawling on her skin as he mentally undressing her. Totally gross. It felt like HED being watching the worst channel on How to Catch a Girl. She is unavailable. Leave her. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐊𝐿𝐿𝐬 heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. A voice upbraided, making the off, putting man in front of a frown that he could no longer flirt with her. Ryder nodded in obedience, beginning to walk away. She could hear him mutter in low tones about how the other male always picked the best ones and never left a nice one for the rest. Thanks, Stevens, she said lightly, touching his shoulder in thanks. Then, she remembered the deal he made with Sebastian, that he would not have physical contact with her. She immediately pulled back. Sorry, I know you're not allowed to touch me. He gave her a secret smile. I can't touch you. You, on the other hand. Mercy saw where he was going with this. In a sense, it was a loophole through which he could have access to her, but it was under her complete control. Stevens did save her from a dirty man, but he himself was no safer. She was really starting to feel like a juicy slice of meat in this place. It must be the whole new girl factor that had them gravitating to her. It was like they didn't have gorgeous girls roaming around here. The girls she congregated within the sauna were each a beauty of their own, so she was definitely not the shiniest dime in the treasure box. You mind walking me to the guest area? Tactfully changing the subject. Might as well make use of him now that he was here. He dipped his head in assent and began to lead her back to her room. Mercy decided it'd be best if he led her in silence. He hit on her before, and the least she wanted was for him to have the slightest inkling of hope in ever catching her attention. Stevens didn't have the same idea in mind, for he tried to coerce her into conversation, and she felt forced to answer him back so as not to appear rude. How long have you been engaged to Sebastian? He inquired, his eye were drawn to the ring on her finger. For some time now. The answer was vague, but her Aunt Sebastian hadn't exactly sat down and discussed what their whole story would be. She didn't expect anyone to ask those questions. Stephen smirked. Hearing her answer made him more arrogant about whatever was running through his head. Most girls keep obsessive tabs on how long they've dated or been engaged. It shows the success of a relationship. You're not as concerned. It would be remiss of her to not notice the way he jabbed their relationship. You're right. Most girls do. I focus more on the content in my relationship rather than the pretty number for everyone else to see and congratulate. Just because a couple's been dating for a long time doesn't mean they're happy together. She hoped her response would put him off. She didn't want him to grow suspicious of their relationship. Thankfully, he changed the subject. Dark Falls. I've been there when I was younger. It's nice enough, but the area is not so lively. Very basic suburban. Very quiet and boring compared to the city. Crowds always attracted me, but yet you live separated from it in a huge mansion for privacy. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐊𝐿𝐿𝐬, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He interjected, making a left turn. Our pack is large, one of the biggest ones, and the wealthiest. We've started various successful businesses. Each of them are booming. With the way we're growing, we'll have to expand our home to accommodate the new members. He boasted, gauging her reaction. When she made none, he continued, You're right. We do live rather separate from the hustle and bustle of the metropolitan area. But one of my biggest plans is to build a city of our own. Mercy nodded. To my agent extraordinaire, Myron Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. The idea sounded out of this world. To have a whole city made up of werewolves. The possibilities were endless. Those plans sound great. I'd love to see it if you ever accomplish it. I will accomplish it, Stevens affirmed. He sounded determined and driven, like a true businessman. Then, his tone shifted. I have observed you. You are a lively girl yourself. I don't believe Dark Falls is for you. Soon you'll grow tired of it and its usual people. This area is better suited for you. There's nothing for me here. Dark Falls is not as populated, but I love the pack. When I'm there, it feels like I'm with family and 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐬. Something could be made for you here. He interrupted. The ring on your finger holds no permanent value. You aren't marked. You can leave Sebastian if you wish and go wherever you like. You're a beautiful woman, and I can offer you many things in this home. 𝐿𝐲's eyes filled with laughter. Right, just like you offer multiple girls. Stephen stiffened, and judging by the way he passed a hand by his neck, it was clear he hadn't expected her to know about them. It's important to have options, since you have so many. You definitely won't be needing me. She paused. Contrary to what you might believe, this ring does have value to me. It shows it included my choice, but will carry over to every aspect of our relationship. It won't just be him making all decisions, but us together. Stephen scoffed. That's giving a woman too much control. He lowered his voice. If you ever change your mind, my estate is open to you. I'm also available for any indiscretions you might have. Massey recoiled at the meaning of his words. The girls admitted that although he hadn't marked them, he was known to not only sleep with some of them, but also single 𝐊𝐲 in the pack. He had a high sexual appetite, and this was one of the reasons he refused to settle down quite yet. It was with great relief that she found they had finally reached the end of their walk. Massey reached for the door, but just as she was about to open it, the wooden door opened on its own. Behind it stood the figure of her supposed fiancé. His arms were crossed, making his biceps bulge more than usual. His stance was cool and collected, but irritation lined his features to belie his emotions. He was not pleased. Stevens took note of this and was the first to speak. Don't worry, Pierce. Your partner is back safe and sound. My word still stands. I didn't touch her. He communicated, but his gleeful smile would give anyone the impression that he is hiding something. Massey didn't fail to notice the way Sebastian clenched his jaw. Unwilling to let this testosterone clash to go for any longer, she wrapped her arms around Sebastian's torso and kissed his cheek. Come on, honey, let's go to sleep. And then, as though a last thought, by Stevens. With that she began pushing Sebastian inside her room, not once looking back at the man behind her. He allowed her to usher him inside, but until the door was closed he refused to stop glaring at the cocky man behind her. He had no reason to be angered at him. Stevens was right. He didn't touch her. Once inside the privacy of her room, those golden eyes once directed at Stevens now narrowed at her. Before I even address the fact that you were with Stevens, I'd like to know where the rest of your dress is, he reprimanded. This is the full dress. Taking advantage of their closeness, she went on her tippy toes to swipe a kiss. She was so close, but last minute he turned his cheek. He pulled on the edge of the fabric, unconvinced. You weren't wearing this when you left before. Massey groaned. Of course not. The sauna has showers beside it, so I brought some change of clothes to get into. I chose this because it's easy to put on. And anyway, as short as this dress is, it's nothing compared to my sleeping clothes. Your sleepwear makes no difference to me. I don't want you wearing this in public. The men in this pack are deplorable and can't be trusted. Massey decided she would wisely not tell him about the incident she had with that slimy writer guy, nor of the offer Stevens had given her. She didn't want to prove him right, much less make him worried. It's not like anything happened anyway. She tried to go to her suitcase in order to change into her sleep clothes, but I held her in place against the door. "We're not done yet. Why were you with Stevens?" "I got lost on my way back. He happened to be in the halls and walked me back." Not wanting to give him a chance to inquire more, she continued to babble. "I met his multiple fiancés. That guy sure loves to sleep around and have a lot of options. Is it common for men to do this?" The distraction worked. He let go of her and allowed her to look through her things. She pulled out a pair of cotton shorts and a thin shirt. These bottoms barely managed to cover her behind and the top only covered her boobs. She folded them back dejectedly. Cuddling was out of the picture now that Sebastian wouldn't be sleeping with her. And while the hallways were average temperature, the bedrooms in this place were freezing cold. It felt like someone wanted to make it snow. She exchanged them for her typical baggy sweats and a shirt. "It's against our nature, but Stevens makes himself the exception," he muttered dryly. "We are not meant to be intimate with anyone except the one we mark." Mercy began to take off her sandals. "Wait, you've never slept with anyone?" After it came out of her lips, she realized what a dumb question it was. The man hadn't even had a girlfriend and kept his distance from females now. "I don't see the novelty in sleeping with many partners." Taking note of the change of clothes on her side, he started back into the door. "I'll let you change and go to sleep. Good night. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐬𝐷𝐼𝐻𝐼 Wait, she cried, beckoning him over. You need to give me a hug and a kiss goodnight. Sebastian stayed in his spot. I don't think that would be wise. Massey groaned. She knew he was still thinking about the fact that he was in heat, but she didn't care. Your being a negligent fiancé at least make sure him comfortable. She huffed. In 3 long strides he was before her, but his arms stayed at his side. What do you need? Massey blinked. He had done that so fast. Well, my hands feel cold. Sebastian went to work by encasing her hands in his. He rubbed them and caused friction, making them feel warm. His large hands made hers look dainty and small. She thought about how those hands worked at the diner, how they trained his packmates and washed each of them after. They were strong and weathered, quite unlike the elegant hands of Stevens. She enjoyed the feel of them, but Massey wanted more. My arms are cold. His hands trailed the expanse of her upper extremities, rubbing them in similar fashion. He even went up to her shoulders and started massaging, and not that was there. It was slightly painful, but she let him until it was finally released. My chest is cold. He pulled her into a hug and gave her a look that clearly told her he knew what she was doing, but was allowing her anyway. His rubs turned to sweet caresses as one stayed at the small of her back, and the other drew comforting circles. He sighed softly. Are you comfortable? My lips are cold. Sebastian chuckled, and she was dumbstruck by the handsomeness of his bright features. His pearly teeth came to view and his eyes glowed with amusement. He pulled her flushed against him and kissed her temple. I think you're comfortable enough. He kissed her again, this time on the very corner of her lips. Lock the door. And then he left her. And Massey really wished he would have stayed, or that something would happen to force them into the same room, that he would change his mind. What she didn't know was that her wish would be granted that same night, except not in the way she thought it would.